Acre for acre, Gettysburg, Pennsylvania is one of the most haunted pieces of ground in America. The Battle of Gettysburg lasted from July 1st to the 3rd, and out of 93,921 Union soldiers, 3,155 were killed, 14,529 were wounded, and 5,365 were reported missing or captured, while the 71,699 Confederate soldiers suffered 3,903 casualties, 18,735 wounded, and 5,425 were either reported missing or captured. While for most of the battle the two armies stayed mostly on the outskirts of town, wounded soldiers were taken into town to be worked on by doctors in buildings to have their appendages crudely hacked off with little to no chloroform and ether to help put them under first. Their screams still echo, breaking through the veil of death to allow the living to hear and sometimes see some of those same soldiers' agonizing last moments. While both armies did their best to keep from hurting or killing innocent civilians, accidents happen, and there is one record of a civilian being killed while she was in the kitchen of her sister's house baking bread for Union troops. Her family and the soldier who took her life eternally locked in that moment. What would become known as Daniel Lady Farm was originally owned by fur trader John Anderson after he had been squatting on the land in the 1700s. King George would eventually give him a deed in 1762 and he built a cabin-type home. In 1785, Samuel Hutchison settled on the property and began farming the land. He filed for a warranty of property in 1807, which would be issued 3 years later. The fine stone house that can still be seen today was built by him in 1822. When Samuel Hutchison died sometime between the 1830s and 1840s, it was given to attorney Moses McLean, and he would become the administrator. Daniel Lady bought the property at an auction in 1840 and would add a barn in 1842. He married Rebecca Spangler in 1851, and they would have several children, with one dying at birth. On July 1st, Confederate troops would arrive and buy 166 bushels of corn off of him for $1 a bushel. At the time, it would seem like a fair bit of money, but this is during the Civil War, and during the Civil War, the Confederate States had started to print their own money, which was no good in the Union, and basically, Union money was no good in Confederate States, Confederate money was no good in Union States, and they paid him Confederate money, so they basically just gave him paper that was only good enough to help him start fires. On top of that, they also stole his animals, and they damaged his and this might have been an accident, but his property was damaged, and you can't say it was only the Confederates or it's only Union on that one, but his property was damaged, and basically the money that they paid him would have been no good to help him try to rebuild. After the battle, the Confederate Army would use his home and barn as a makeshift hospital, and his wooden furniture was broken up to be used as firewood, while his doors were used as operating tables. By the evening of the first day, General Johnson arrived on the property and would use the home as his headquarters, and there are reports that General Lee visited him to form battle plans for Culp's Hill. One of their children's 1949 obituaries even mentions his visit. As mentioned earlier, their home and barn was used as a makeshift hospital, and there are reports of over 87 officers being treated on the property. In 2010, a forensic team went into one of the rooms and confirmed that several dark spots were stains from human blood, while others in the front of the fireplace are char marks that shows how hot it was kept in an attempt to keep the water that was in the buckets nearby at a room temperature. After the battle, the family, along with nearby Confederate and Union troops, were moved to Camp Letterman Field Hospital, and during that time, Daniel Lady would help to bury 37 Confederate soldiers, with 22 of them being unidentified. The family was eventually allowed to return to their home, where they were shocked to find the body of a Confederate soldier still laying in one of their rooms. Even though the Confederate soldiers outnumbered the Union ones, they still suffered a loss at Culp's Hill due to the Union having the advantage of having gotten to higher ground, making it harder for the Confederate troops to hit them and not the dirt under them. Due to all of the death and misery that the farm saw and the fact that at least one body had been forgotten, it is said that the home is haunted by the spirits of the Confederate soldiers, with the upstairs being the most active location. Tillie Pierce was only 15 years old when the Battle of Gettysburg took place. She kept a journal that would eventually be turned into a book that detailed what she saw and took part in during the battle. She would help dress wounds, carry water, and would do her best to comfort wounded soldiers in her home. She wrote in her journal, "Nothing before in my experience had ever paralleled the sight we then and there beheld. There were the groans and crying, the struggling and dying, crowded side by side, while attendants sought to aid and relieve them as best they could." Her family home is now a bed and breakfast. The blue room where Tillie would tend to the wounded and dying soldiers is said to be haunted, and guests report hearing footsteps marching through the hallway and attic above them. Others have reported seeing troops wandering up and down the stairs, seemingly on patrol, and one guest was frightened when they walked into the room and saw a ghost sitting on the edge of their bed. Jennie Wade is the only civilian casualty during the Battle of Gettysburg, and despite the house being named after her, it is actually the house that her sister and brother-in-law lived in, not Jennie. Jennie lived in a house with her mother and younger siblings when the war took place, but she had packed up her and her younger siblings and escaped to her sister's house, where their mother was at, helping her after having given birth, due to Jennie's actual house being on the outskirts and her sister's being further in, where Jennie expected them to be safe. On the morning of July 3rd, Jennie was inside of her sister's kitchen making bread for some Union soldiers that had shown up. She had kept the inside door to the kitchen open in an attempt to protect herself from any stray bullets as she worked. Unbeknownst to her, there was a Confederate soldier in the house across the street that had a lone Union soldier that was waiting outside in his sights. He pulled the trigger, and in a cruel twist of fate, the Union soldier moved out of the way at the same time, and the bullet went through the door he had been standing in front of. Any other time, the man probably would have cursed his luck and reloaded his rifle before waiting for the opportunity to shoot again. But this time he must have heard the screams and wails, as Jennie's family would have heard the gunshot and gone to check on her. Jennie Wade was dead from a single bullet wound before she even hit the floor. Hearing the commotion, the Union soldiers would rush into the house and realize what had just happened. They needed to get the family and the body out safely, so they would run upstairs and use the butts of their rifles to smash a hole in the wall that separated Jennie's sister's half of the house with that of her neighbors. They carried Jennie's body through the house and out of the hole to the other side, where they were able to get outside and down to the basement for more safety. People that have gone to the house report hearing loud bangs and to feel the sudden rush of cold air on the second floor, and people get an eerie feeling when they go downstairs to the basement where there is a replica of Jennie's body. Jennie's father was in jail at the time of her death and was unable to say his goodbyes, but his spirit has returned to the house. Reports state that people have had something unseen push them away from her body if they are doing something unsavory to it. The Cashtown Inn was built in 1797 and it was always meant to be used as a tavern and boarding inn. It was actually the first stagecoach stop west of Gettysburg when the turnpike was created in 1813. Jacob Mickley, who was the innkeeper at the time, actually witnessed the Confederate Army as they made their way to Gettysburg, stating, "The entire force under Lee passed within 20 feet of my barroom." The inn was used as a field hospital after the battle. There are stories of amputated limbs stacking up so high outside that sunlight couldn't enter. There were reports of people hearing footsteps in their room along with frequent knocking at their door. The inn has been investigated several times by various paranormal teams, one of which is TAPS. The Farnsworth House is named after Brigadier General Elon John Farnsworth, who led an ill-fated charge after the failure of Pickett's charge. The original part of the house was built in 1810, followed by the brick structure in 1833. The house is the same one where the Confederate sharpshooter was at when he accidentally took Jennie Wade's life, and it was used as a hospital at one point. In the modern times, it's used as a restaurant and bar / bed and breakfast, and there are stories from customers of strange noises coming from the attic and singing coming from the basement. So, if you go to the Farnsworth House, you're basically surrounded by spirits. The Dobbin House saw both the Civil War and the Underground Railroad pass through, and it actually took part in the Underground Railroad. There's a secret room where slaves were hidden away at, and there's a legend that says that from time to time bloodstains will appear on the floor. People that have gone to the Dobbin House have claimed to see African Americans walking around throughout the building, and there's one story that says that there's a girl who looks frightened that has been spotted staring out of the window. Built in 1854, the Sachs Covered bridge spans Marsh Creek just south of Gettysburg. It's 100 feet long and 15 feet wide. The wooden beams crisscross to form a lattice, which gives the bridge its structural integrity when being crossed by wagons and horses. At the time, it cost $1,544 to be built, which, give or take, would be about $37,716.37 in today's money, which is actually kind of a lot to build a wooden bridge. It was designated as Pennsylvania's most historic covered bridge in 1938, but it was closed to vehicles 30 years later. In 1980, it was placed on the National Register of Historic Places. A flash flood knocked it off of one of its abutments in June 19, 1996, when there was already a $500,000 restoration project taking place, and an additional $100,000 was raised to help repair the damage. It was rededicated on July 21st, 1997. There's a story that says that there were Confederate soldiers that were hung on the beams of Sachs Covered Bridge for some reason, and people report that they still see their bodies hanging from the beams. Many visitors have claimed to see full-bodied apparitions of the soldiers, experienced strange touches and hair pulling, and have even heard eerie noises. Another strange phenomenon is what's called the smoking ghost. If you place a lit cigarette down, it appears to spin and even have a puff taken out of it. Some claim that the ghost's name is Tennessee. Others claim that they can smell pipe tobacco on the bridge as well. The Gettysburg Hotel was established in 1797 and sits in downtown Gettysburg. It started out as a tavern in Lincoln Square. William McLennan bought it and renamed it to the Little Indian Queen. In 1846, it was changed to the McLennan Brothers. In the 1890s, it was bought once again and the old tavern was torn down and a hotel was built in its place and named the Gettysburg Hotel. In the early 1900s, it offered amenities that other hotels didn't have at the time, such as a fine restaurant, hot and cold baths, electric lights, and steam heat. In 1955, it served as the White House while President Eisenhower recovered from a heart attack he had had while in Gettysburg. The Eisenhowers would be among the last of its guests before it closed its doors. In 1983, it was ravaged by fire but was restored and reopened by 1991, and it serves as a functioning hotel once again. The most famous ghost in the hotel is said to be Rachel. She's believed to be a nurse from the Civil War and has been seen in the hotel and wandering the streets looking for soldiers. Guests report that their drawers are being opened and their clothes are being removed while they're out. They also report that the spirit of a Union soldier is said to still haunt the rooms and that there is a woman that's been seen dancing in the hotel's ballroom. Gettysburg College was founded in 1832 and was originally named Pennsylvania College and then was renamed to Gettysburg College in 1921. Originally there was Pennsylvania Hall, Linnean Hall, McCurry Gymnasium, Stevens Hall, and a few houses for the faculty. All of the students, save for the female ones, lived at Pennsylvania Hall. Due to the growing student population, they had to build a new recitation hall, which was renamed to Glatfelder Hall, and Brew Memorial Chapel were built in 1890. Since Gettysburg College was a Lutheran college, the students were required to attend church 3 times a week, and the chapel made it easier for them to do so. Glatfelder Hall housed the president's office, classrooms, and 2 literary societies' libraries. The first caretaker was an African American man named John Hopkins, who lived behind Pennsylvania Hall. He was respected by the students and was even called the vice president of the school by them, and is credited with taking such good care of the buildings and making sure that they lasted up to the modern day. The Civil War hurt the enrollment of the college, and in the 19th century, women would be allowed to attend the college as well. Gradually, the student population would start to go back up before the Great Depression hit and hurt numbers again. Since it was hard for them to make ends meet, the decision was made to tear down Linnean Hall and several of the buildings, while Glatfelder Hall was redone in 1929 and Brew Chapel was redone in 1925. Schumacher Memorial Library was built in 1929, and during this time the college took back their decision to allow women to attend. President Hanson would guide the college through both world wars and the Great Depression and ushered in a new era of buildings such as a new chapel that would cause them to turn the old one into the music building. He retired in 1952, but during that time, dorms were built along with the college dining center. Brew Hall was turned into the theater's art center. In 1983, and the music building was moved to Schumacher Hall, and a new library called Musselman Library was built. Due to the expansion, the school went back to accepting students of both genders, and eventually people of color were allowed to attend by the 1960s. In Pennsylvania Hall, it's reported that people have heard the moans and cries of the young men that died during the Battle of Gettysburg. There's a story that two women who worked in Pennsylvania Hall during the 80s were leaving work one night and had taken the elevator down to the first floor, but instead of stopping on the first floor, it stopped in the basement. And when the doors opened, they gasped in horror as they saw people in hospital garments standing around working on people. The people in the garments turned and looked at them as if to ask for help while the women pounded on the close button. When the elevator finally took them to the first floor, they ran and grabbed a security guard and told him what they had just seen. The guard went down with them thinking that it was a prank pulled by the students, only to find no one there when they went back down. There would have been no time for the students to clean up so quickly, since the women reported they could see and smell blood coming from the room, and there would have been no way to clean it all up in a matter of minutes. During a tour, a couple claimed to know one of the women involved, only to discover that they knew a completely different person who had attended the college, who also had the same experience. Another spirit that's been seen in Pennsylvania Hall is called either the Lone Sentinel or the Lookout, due to the fact that he is seen carrying a lantern and a rifle as if he's still on patrol. There's a reported sighting of the Lady in White at Glatfelder Hall. She's reported to be the spirit of a woman who lost her love in the war and jumped off of the tower at Glatfelder Hall. People say that if you look her in the eyes, you'll suffer the same fate as her. The cupola is also reported to be haunted. Students report that they see someone up in the cupola that points their rifle at them, but when security goes up to look, the door is locked and no one has been sighted going up before the security guard. The homestead was originally used by General Oliver Howard before it was opened on November 20th, 1866. The first matron of the orphanage was Philinda Humiston. Her husband had been killed in the Civil War, and without him, she had to work to support their 3 children, and she gladly welcomed anyone who was now orphaned due to the father dying in the war. For years, the children were well taken care of while they waited for their new families. It all changed after Philinda remarried in 1869 and moved to Maryland. For a year, the children were left in limbo until Rosa Carmichael took over, and then it became hell on earth for the poor little children. Rumors of her abuse surfaced in 1873, and when the children were absent in the 1876 Memorial Day parade, people started to grow concerned. Under Philinda's care, the children were very active in the community, but under Rosa, they were almost never seen. Rosa was arrested, and charged for her cruelty, and was fined $20 along with being told to leave Gettysburg. But she returned to the orphanage anyway. Rosa was investigated once again, and it came to light that she locked and chained children up in a dungeon-like room in the basement, and there were rumors that a few of the children mysteriously disappeared, never to be seen again. In June of 1877, a Philadelphia paper would report the goings-on, and the story would be repeated in the Star and Sentinel. In December of that year, the orphanage was closed, the children were taken away, and Rosa was run out of town. The building was turned into a duplex in 1803, a bed and breakfast in 1915, and then a museum in 2013. As a result of Rosa's cruelty, there are stories of children being seen and heard in the orphanage. A man claims that he heard a child crying out for help from somewhere on the orphanage's property, and ghost adventurers have caught evidence of their spirits, including a little voice saying, "You're so kind," when they were left some candy. The Devil's Den is formed from Little Round Top and Big Round Top. It actually got its name before the Civil War, due to people thinking that there was a snake hidden inside called the Devil. There were reports that it measured anywhere between 8 feet to 15 feet. On July 2nd, 1863, Smith's Union Battery with 6 Napoleon smoothbores used the hill to counterfire on Confederate artillery prior to McLaws' assault at 5:30 p.m. Against Hood's assault that started at 4 p.m., Devil's Den was defended by Birney's 1st Division as the far left position from the Peach Orchard salient at the 3rd Corps. The hill was captured when the 1st Texas Regiment, having pressed forward to the crest of the hill and driven the enemy from his battery, and Anderson's Confederates used the hill for the first attack on the wheat field. From near the slaughter pen, the 40th New York Volunteer Infantry Regiment forced the 2nd and 17th Georgia Regiments of Benning's Brigade to retreat to Devil's Den. Confederate sharpshooters were stationed between the rocks to fire upon Union soldiers at Little Round Top. Among the victims were General Stephen H. Weed and Lieutenant Charles E. Hazlitt. Hazlitt's guns counterfired upon them, and many were killed from the concussion of air. The 124th New York Monument with Ellis statue was dedicated near Devil's Den in 1884. Postbellum avenues were constructed to Devil's Den, such as Sickles Avenue from the west, Crawford Avenue in 1895 to the north, 95 of Warren Avenue across Plum Run to the east. From 1894 to 1916, the Gettysburg Electric Railway operated on a curve along a curve crossing Plum Run, which is also Rock Creek, around the south base of the hill, with the Tipton Station providing Devil's Den services. In 1916, a Devil's Den boulder was used as a Saddle Lee Hospital memorial at Philadelphia's Clark Park. The nearby 1933 Comfort Station was demolished in 2009, and its access bridge over Plum Run remains to the east. In 1952, ROTC students conducted a mock battle at the site, and a Devil's Den Access Committee was formed in 1988. Triangular Field is found northwest of Devil's Den. Apparitions of Confederate sharpshooters have been sighted by the rocks at the bottom of the field. The rebel yell has been heard echoing out across the field, and people have seen the impressions of people that they can't see moving and crawling through the grass. Cannons and screaming can be heard in the field. The moans of dying soldiers can be heard, and Union soldiers are spotted at the field's left gate. People have spotted what they think are reenactors in the area, only to find out that there aren't any at the moment, and some have even had conversations with them from time to time. People have also reported having trouble with their cameras, no matter how new or state-of-the-art it is, in the triangular field. Battlefield Brew Works is on the land that W. H. Montfort Farm used to sit. The farm was named after the Montfort brothers who settled there in 1848. Their barn was built along the Hunterstown Road the next year. During the Civil War, 1,300 soldiers were taken to the farm after the failed assault on Culp's Hill. The farm was the biggest Confederate hospital, and the troops occupied the barn, the house, and the grounds until the battle was over. They left 446 wounded soldiers behind for the next 28 days, many of which were too injured to be moved or were near death. 47 of the soldiers would die from their injuries and would be buried on the property before being disinterred and reburied at the Hollywood Cemetery in Richmond, Virginia. Battlefield Brew Works is Pennsylvania's oldest operating brewery and distillery under one roof. Much of the building is original, with the bar being made from a witness tree that was on the property. Women report feeling uneasy in the restroom, and a paranormal channel, Visual Paranormal Investigations, caught several EVPs. They caught a male's voice saying, "Oh yes," when they asked for the entity's name, and a voice saying, "Help me," in the attic. The entities kept draining their equipment's batteries, and when asked for the name of who was doing it during a spirit box session, a voice said, "Not Steve." When asked if they were upset that the team was up in the attic, the entities said yes, along with several other answers to questions they had. I'm not going to go over everything they did and didn't catch, because as far as I know, the video is still up on their YouTube channel. They don't call it the Battlefield Brew Works at like any point. It seems like they call it Montfort Farm. And that's actually what they titled the video. It's episode 7 of their first season, but it won't say Battlefield Brew Works, it'll say Montfort Farms. And that's actually what they call it. Apparently there's a little horse and buggy. Well, not a horse and buggy, but a little buggy that has it on the side of it too. So that, I'm not sure if they use that as a thumbnail, but that would be a hint that you've clicked on the right video. And as for my videos, I honestly don't know when I'm going to get back on a regular schedule. It's probably the rest of the year. It's probably just going to be sporadic, because of the fact that there's just been so much going on. I haven't started Christmas shopping yet, so that's not into the chaos. But my 1-year-old sleeps when she wants to now. So half of the time I can't even get, like, you'll hear throughout the different recordings I used, you'll hear her making all kinds of noises. And this is like 10:30 at night. I thought she was gonna sleep, and she just didn't want to sleep tonight. And this is my life now. So hopefully next year it'll be on a better schedule. But as of right now, it's going to be sporadic because she won't keep to a schedule. I've been trying to get her to get to sleep at a certain time, and she just won't do it. Alright, so eventually on to the next. Thanks. Bye.